So the question is, for Caltech, can you elaborate on the involvement of Verizon and what exactly was going on there?
So Verizon wasn't a sponsor, really. We just told them we wanted like fiber optics at the venue, and we contacted them very late because of AT&T, and so they said the earliest they could basically have a guy come out and install the fiber optics and everything, and this was before we could put the routers up, was Friday morning, the day of the event. And so as David said, we emailed the CEO, the executive assistant replied, and she's like, fine, we'll do it 2 days before the event, which was still a risk, but it worked out.
Next question. So if a new person comes on, like, how do you deal with that?
Right. We don't just like take everyone into Empowered. There's actually a pretty rigorous recruitment process. We basically put them on project teams, let the project directors like roll them through tons of like tests. There's an application that usually has a really weird question on it. Like last time was like, you wake up 2 hours before the Empowered meeting in a strange room with a newborn baby. How do you get there in time? Like, and like we look for like the most creative answers, and there's a lot of like filtering that we do before. Obviously there's still people that just like quite frankly suck. And those people just don't move through the organization. And if there is a problem where like project directors are not performing, that's where the executive team has to kind of like step down and kill themselves to make sure it happens.
So the question is for everyone. Do you guys outsource to your art department at your school, like your logo assets, things like that? And if not, how do you get them?
Caltech doesn't do art, so.
We have Carolyn. If Carolyn's here, I don't know if she's here. I think she might be picking up laundry, but yeah, we have one person who does pretty much all the design on our team, and she's fantastic, and her name is Carolyn, and you'll probably meet her this weekend.
She's an Asian with blonde hair. She's an Asian with blonde hair, so you probably recognize her.
Yeah, at PenApps, we do something similar. We have a designer that we all know that we actually hired last semester to work for us, and now we have a whole like marketing and design team that's part of our organization that guy is actually training how to do the design for our organization.
Yeah, so Empowered takes branding pretty seriously. We have one of our like executive members is designated as like the chief design person, or chief branding person, making sure that we have like an equal brand throughout all the things we do. And we do have a designated creative team that does a lot of design work as well as with our like CBO.
Awesome. So the question is for everybody, given the size of all of these mega hackathons that's going on, with all the people in the room who are trying to organize their own hackathon, it can obviously be a little hard to get started when you're smaller and attracting people. How do they deal with that? What are some strategies?
So for us, I guess we talked about earlier, finding value and creating value. So you look for areas of need and you just go all out in there. So that's why we're doing a hardware hackathon. That's why we're doing a high school hackathon. We've joked around a bit about hackathons for toddlers and like, crazy things, but you throw a lot of ideas at the wall, looking for who you can help, and then eventually something will stick.
There's a bar camp proposal back there that I put up, which is exactly that. Let's talk about how to do different ideas, different twists on the existing model. So if you like that, put stickers on it.
Yeah, for HackTech, it was kind of interesting. Our initial intention was to have maybe 400 people out to the event, and then we talked to Dave Fontenot, and he was like, you guys need to do like a 1,500 person hackathon. Like, you might as well go big if you're gonna go. And that might not have been the best idea, but like in all honesty, a lot of these big hackathons are gonna change their intention next year. A lot of the smaller hackathons, I think, are gonna go in slightly different directions. So like, don't be afraid to like do something that doesn't fit the mold of what we're doing up here.
I mean, if it makes you like feel any better as a smaller hackathon, as a bigger hackathon, we do kind of like always try to like look out and make sure that we're not getting like over innovated by smaller hackathons. So you guys definitely have an opportunity, like being somebody who has so much opportunity to define what they are, to kind of just like jump the gun and do something that nobody saw coming.
So the question is, how do you communicate across your teams, and how do you deal with transitioning knowledge to new team members?
So we onboarded a majority of our team like 1 month before the event, 3 weeks. 3 weeks before our event, we onboarded probably like 12 or 13 out of the 20 members on our team. The entire summer, it was a smaller kind of exec team that was dealing with all of the things we dealt with. And I think that the most important thing when onboarding people is to make them immediately have some sort of like personal investment in whatever you're doing. So we onboarded our freshmen and we didn't give them meaningless tasks, you know. Everyone had a really important role in putting on the event. We had to. We only had 20 people working on it. And I think that people realized that everyone was very, very necessary and kind of appreciated that.
Yeah. So for PenApps, we actually do struggle with communication because we have an organization with about 50 people in it right now, and they're all organized in subcommittees and whatnot. We try to keep it mostly to email. You know, we have different listservs for different groups. Like there's a logistics at PenApps, and when I want to talk to my logistics guys, I send them there. And we try to meet in person as much as possible to discuss anything that's important. We try not to like make decisions over email. And if it's quick, you know, we have a Facebook group, and we just shoot questions at each other all the time. Like, oh, the sponsor wants this, what should we do? Or, oh, like, what's the deal with tables, or what's the deal with that? And as far as transfer of knowledge, that's also something that we struggle with. I try very much to be open, and essentially I encourage the new people we take on to come directly to me with questions and come to the committee exec members with questions. But we've talked about like making a wiki that has like all the information about how we do things, and that never really happened. Yeah, that's probably not gonna happen.
So for HackTech, we were probably a bit of a special case, but the way that our communication worked was that I would wake up every morning, and this kid and all the other organizers would walk in my door and sit in my dorm room all day, and we'd work on HackTech, and they'd leave at like 2 a.m. and go back to bed and repeat. And so basically, what I'm trying to say is the best way to do this is if you're all best friends, and if you all hang out together anyways, because then that just turns into like your hangouts is your organization sessions.
Yeah, like fitting 50 people into a dorm room isn't the best idea, but we had 4, so like that worked out. We basically just communicated over Facebook chat, like nothing. Yeah, we didn't have an organizational like workflow per se.
For us, for the communication question, it's a lot of emails. We BCC, CC on everything. We make sure to try and be as transparent as possible to make sure that everybody knows what's going on at all times. Sponsorship people should know what's happening with buses and logistical things. Like everybody should have like some central point. We also keep a weekly meeting where the executive team of Empowered is there to make sure that the tough questions are being answered, nothing's being missed. Kind of like your weekly check-in, and make sure that like the team is getting together. As for transition of knowledge, the answer is pretty much just no. We almost don't do it on purpose, transition a lot of knowledge. Like we encourage our directors to reach out to past directors. Tom Erdman, who's in the back, he was very helpful, as well as Dave Fontenot and Raj Veer. They were really helpful for this semester. But again, it's about hiring people who aren't like, you know, qualified. We want those people to learn and grow and kind of make some of the same mistakes that were happening before, just so those people become better, right? It's half of the point of running a hackathon is to do the whole self-improvement thing, make sure that the team grows as much as possible.
Okay, I got a question. When you're doing these mega hackathons, which have these huge budgets, how do you deal with accounting and finances? And the liability involved.
The one-word answer to that is Swift.
Swift basically managed all our liability. He did all the accounting. So yeah, he had a big task.
I mean, yeah, same one person, Rachel. She's in the back. She's also running our hardware hackathon. She does an amazing job. And she does spreadsheets on OCD organization, just someone who's detail-oriented and awesome.
Ideally, we should be doing that too. We're working on it. But we work with the engineering school's business office, and they like actually keep track of our finances for us. But internally, we also keep a document and try to keep track of it.
So we kind of moved to this model, and I would suggest it. Have somebody have like a single point of yes or no. Make sure that all payments or whatever go through one person, and that person is always keeping an eye on the budget and the bank account, because you know with hackathons you have money and then you have money that you actually have. So you always need to be like wary of that. So be careful with too many people having the power to buy things. Because again, like the communication thing is super important. And if you have, Director A buying things and Director B buying things, and they don't know that each other are buying things, you could run into some problems.
So how do you identify new members for your organization?
So HackMIT, as Richard talked about, is kind of a subcommittee of this umbrella organization called TechX. And TechX, at the very beginning of the year, there's a expo for all the clubs, so we have our little booth there, and then TechX has info sessions where all the committees get to propose what they do, or present what they do. And so Emily and I were there pitching HackMIT and trying to convince people that this is a cool thing, you should apply. Then everyone, submits an application, we do one round of interviews, and we select from there.
Yeah, I'm going to talk on this too. So actually, PennApps, before I joined, was very much kind of like Hack Tech. It was a group of like 8-ish guys who all knew each other and worked well together. And I think they did put out some applications, but they didn't do a lot of recruiting. And that's something I've really tried to do, is reach out into the community, and particularly the freshmen, and get them on board. We have a very tight-knit computer science community, so we post in all of our groups, and we go to classes, and we talk to people and try and get them involved. And we have a quick application and just ask them, what are you interested in and what's your experience? And then as an exec board, we go over it. And essentially each committee member or each exec member kind of chose people that they really liked or thought would be really good for their committee, or their applications really hit home. And that's kind of how we've selected the new people, and it's worked really well so far.
So I mentioned the recruitment process that Empowered has during my little talk, but we do try to keep all of our directors coming through our recruitment and growth process, because we need to keep sustainable, right? We've been around for 7 years, and we plan on being around for a long time. So the way that we found that we can trust that our directors are doing a good job and are going to be qualified for positions is by going through the kind of like Empowered recruitment process, working on one of the teams, and then becoming directors. We do some like headhunting every now and then, but we make sure that those people get some pretty like long 4-hour, 8-hour crash courses before they can even like talk to their team.
And then the one thing I'd like to add is that I think the most important trait to try to identify is dedication. Just trying to know in advance who would spend sleepless nights, who would stay up. And it's something that you might think is hard to identify, but if you really like sit down and think about it for a little bit, you'll have a pretty good sense of who's going to be dedicated and who's not.
Freshmen. You want freshmen?
Freshmen. What can mentors do to help with administrations? I'm assuming you mean school administrations. Yes. Basically, what we're getting at here is that there's a lot of people in the community who may not be current students. They may be alumni or have connections to universities. How can we lend a hand and help and make your guys' lives easier?
I think one thing to be very careful of is not kind of trying to step way too far above the administrators you're dealing with, because they're people too, and if they feel slighted, then it's even more difficult to convince them to help you out. We actually did consider talking to alumni, and then we decided against it because we thought it would just escalate the whole thing out of proportion. We still wanted to really like work with them and convince them that we wanted to work with them because we had no choice. So.
I wish I could give you a better answer than this, but I think had some people from outside MIT come and stepped in, and I mean, it would have been nice to have a couple letters just showing like how much you care and sort of have a heartfelt thing. But if you had really tried to like take a lead on the situation, it would have just scared the administrators away. It would have screwed up the trust, I think. So that's the honest answer.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. So what we do to kind of get in with administrators is we meet weekly with a couple administrators, making sure that we always have say, and we're like on a very, very personal basis. So if we need something from administration, they can make it happen, which is really beneficial to us. As well as that, it's always bad to like try to go and like fight, butt heads with the administration just because they will win every time. If they want to win, they'll win. Like that's just how it works. So from an alumni like point of view, I think the best thing you can do is publicly support things. Like talk, if you ever come back to Michigan, like mention, or for us, like mention Empowered, mention MHAX, mention those things mention Empowered, mention MHAX, mention like that alumni notice these things, and the university will just automatically support them more, just because they always want to make alumni happy. When you talk to administration, one of the first things that comes up is like, how is this making alumni more like happier? How is this gonna like get us more, get development, more dollars or whatever?
Right, I agree. Coming out publicly in support is great, and also letting the organizers know that you're in support and that you're available if we need anything, because there might be a time when we need you to send something to a particular administrator. Again, we really don't want people overstepping us, because we kind of have this strategy and we have this trust worked out. But I know we're having trouble. We have a good relationship with a group of administrators, but there's other administrators we have trouble with who don't really understand us. So, right now we're having some of the administration that understands us help, and it might help to have somebody on the outside who also understands us explain the situation. But again, go through us, don't go directly to those people.
So the question is, how do you structure your administration during the actual event as opposed to when you're planning it?
I think a lot of us don't have a good strategy for this, which is why we're all kind of looking at each other. I know, so personally, the last time was my first time running Pen Apps, and I made extensive plans for day of, like who would be where at every time, and exactly what would be happening, what all of the exec members would be doing, and what their responsibilities would be. And same thing for volunteers. We had this all like very nicely charted out. And Friday afternoon, before anything started, everything fell apart. And we just couldn't keep to it because, somebody like me would need to be overseeing that everybody is in their place, but I also need to be doing crisis management and dealing with a lot of the bigger issues that are going on. So I think it generally just devolves into, exec people running around and oh, we need somebody at this place. Make sure you guys are communicating well at the event. I know MHEX does like the walkie-talkies. We have trouble with that because the building we're in doesn't really work. But make sure you guys are communicating well at the event, and that's really the best thing you can do.
Yeah, I think that we could have been a lot better at having point people. We realized about halfway through that having like one point person for every event was probably the way to go. But I think that no matter how established you make these point people be, there's always going to be that element of chaos. I think one of the co-founder of Code County pulled aside my best friend and asked her if I was mentally stable, and like I was just like running around, and I think everyone else was too. And I think that there's no way to completely get rid of that.
I think so. For Tech Fair, which is a different beast itself, like it is completely organized. We have like 40 people, we have here's going to be where at every time. I don't think that will work for the hackathon mold. I don't think people will be as interested in that. So I think you can like have everything organized to the T if you just put more time into it. But that organized chaos is actually kind of fun sometimes.
Yeah, so one kind of like strategic thing that we do, which has nothing to do with organizing, but it has to do with like getting people working hard during the hackathon, is we generally structure our recruitment around big events like MHAX and Startup Career Fair. So we have all these like passionate young freshmen, and we say like, this is going to be the most like chaotic, crazy thing that you're ever gonna do. Like sponsors, CEOs are gonna come ask you like for things, and you're not gonna know what to say. Like, can you survive? We try to make sure that like we do have somebody to go to. Like we did have people in charge of sponsorship, but they're not always around. They're not always on their like walkie-talkies. So we kind of make sure that everyone has the mentality that they might need to step up and kind of like, answer a question that they might not know, or walk with somebody around the building 10 laps to figure it out.
So the general structure that we adopted was that we have one person on our team going around in a U-Haul, picking up everything that they need to pick up around town. So like trash bags, water, everything like that. And then we split up the rest of our team, half the people on hackers. So making sure that everyone's happy, going around like asking people about their hacks. And the other half the people on sponsors, making sure that sponsors aren't going to back out, that like they're not very angry with us. And that worked out pretty well for our team.
And just to emphasize what he said earlier, like unexpected things are gonna happen and chaos is gonna happen. Like we had Childish Gambino show up, and we had no idea he was coming, and of course that causes a lot of chaos. We had Evan Spiegel show up. We had no idea he was coming, and so you're always gonna need to allocate more sources, and like that comes with volunteers. But yeah, I mean, there's always chaos, I guess.
Oh darn, Evan Spiegel showed up. Your life sucks.
I would actually add into that one thing I've noticed a lot is having a pool of volunteers that you can just pull from as needed is really helpful. At Hack Tech just this other weekend, like we had 10 or 15 people who were just like, if I needed somebody to do something, I could just grab them and be like, hey, go do this right now, and they would do it. I think that happens to help a lot with like those day of logistics that change around quite a bit. How do you schedule what weekend your hackathon takes place on? This is a great question.
You pull up the unofficial schedule, which is a janky Google Doc, and you make sure you don't schedule your event when there are too many other events going on. And yes, and you play nice and don't fight.
Yeah, so we were kind of, I know what this is directed at. If there is a conflict, let's say there is one weekend that several hackathons want to be on, first of all, communication is key and making sure everybody knows when everybody else's hackathon is. That's why I created this janky Google Doc where I asked hackathon organizers to go throw up when their events were, and it actually revealed a lot of conflicts. Maybe one school in one region had planned their event, they've already got the venue booked, and somebody in another region had also done that, and those organizers just didn't know each other. And events like this really help that. We can meet each other and we can actually figure out, we can communicate with each other and talk about when our events are. I'm in support of some kind of umbrella organization that helps us with these decisions. It would be nice. Perhaps, but
man, who could that be?
Who would that be? But we've managed to work it out. Again, we know each other through events like this and going to each other's hackathons, and we're all people. We can talk it out and figure it out. But looking at calendars is good, but talking to people is best.
Yeah, I think just talking. I think a lot of this stuff happens very not formally, and so it's just communication over Facebook or whatever. You say we're going on this date, don't take that date, and so I think the Google Doc helped us a lot. But it's just informal communication.
Also, in addition to that, there's a lot of smaller issues that pop up at individual schools that you should probably be aware of. For example, Stanford had a ski trip that was on the weekend of our hackathon, so we only had 40% yield instead of 60% yield, and some schools had midterms on the week of our hackathon, which is kind of weird, but that also decreased our yield too. So there's a lot of other factors that go into it that you should be pretty aware of.
Yeah, I mean, with that being said, there's so many hackathons and there's so many other things going on. You're never just gonna find the perfect weekend that nothing else is going on. So it's just kind of a judgment call.
Given the number of hackathons that are happening and the finite amount of resources that are out there, and that we're all competing against each other for the same finite resources, what strategies do we have for working together to better make this work for everybody rather than competing with each other?
So something to keep in mind is that this market is not even nearly saturated at the moment. There's still a lot of potential to reach out to new sponsors. There's still a lot of potential to reach out to kids who don't even know what a hackathon is. The other thing in general that you should keep in mind though is that I lost my train of thought. 1 second.
So there's going to be a round of talks about sponsorship later. And how to deal with this explosion of hackathons with regards to sponsorship. There's a whole round of those later, so I'm not going to go over that now. But with regards to attendees, I agree. There's so many people who would benefit from going to a hackathon. There are only very few that are targeted towards the entire, country. And a lot or most are very focused on this is this region's hackathon, and they're equally great for the community.
The other important thing is differentiation. So like, I encourage you strongly to not just follow the mold that like we've set, because that's gonna probably limit slightly the number of sponsors you can get. If you give them some proposition that's completely different from what like we're doing, you're much, much more likely to get a lot of money.
And one thing you mentioned is the logistics of this. My advice to you is plan your event as early as humanly possible. Because if you plan your event and lock in your date and lock in your location and then start reaching out to sponsors, you can hit them up before the other 19 hackathons do and lock a lot of them in. We had an issue with sponsors who were already locked into too many hackathons before we had reached out to them. So I'd say get on it as early as possible.
Yeah, I definitely think it's really important to like know exactly the value that you're bringing. Also know exactly the value that's different than the others that you're bringing. So one thing that we decided to do this year to like kind of separate us from all the other hackathons is build an app. And the MHacks app actually got us a lot of sponsorship that may not have been there or may have been less, just because it was something different that hadn't been done before. Yeah, it was actually like sponsoring push notifications was actually part of our document. So like you would get a certain amount of push notifications as a sponsor.
So I kind of have a follow-up question to that. I'd like to go down the line. What does each of you optimize your event for, and how do you measure that success? Because since you're talking about differentiation here, I'm curious like what your differentiating factor is and how you optimize for that.
So for us, I think we try to have something different every time. This time, I think we were really trying to hone down the sponsorship experience. The user experience for our MHacks 2 was pretty good, I think, being in the big house and all that stuff. But the sponsors seemed to be a little bit less happy, and it did make it a little bit harder for us to get new sponsors. So we did try to and like rethink the way that sponsors interacted with hackers, as well as try to keep the event to the same quality.
We like intentionally did not have a spring hackathon this year because we thought our resources could be allocated elsewhere. And one of the things we decided to do was hold a high school hackathon, and it was so hard to get underprivileged kids to attend. Like there's just so much more that can be done in that regard. So if you want like a hard problem and you want to go differentiate, then that's one road to go down.
So our like obvious differentiation factor was that we were West Coast. Now that we're done with that, though, we haven't actually announced this yet, but next year we're going directly for underprivileged minorities and getting more females out and trying to get more apps actually to market from the hackathon. So there's a lot of different things that like you can still differentiate towards, and there's a lot of problems that still need to be solved that you can solve.
So PenApps, actually, we try to be like the top tier hackathon, I want to say. Like we take applications and we read over them extensively, and we only let like the very top tier hackers in, and that's how we try to differentiate. But in reality, we measure success, I think, the same way everyone else does. Do things run smoothly? Are people happy? And trying to have high quality hacks. But in reality, we all have high quality hacks.
So I'm being asked to stall a little bit while the food arrives, but I actually have a serious follow-up question to that. How do you decide who is a high quality hacker, and what does that say to new developers?
That's a great question. So as to the first part, we really look for people who have experience, particularly people who have gone around to other hackathons and won things at other hackathons. We look at GitHubs pretty extensively too, who's active in the community and who really is building cool things and sharing it with people. And then after that, we look at separate projects that people have done. And as to what that says to new developers, again, this is how PenApps is trying to differentiate and be different from the other hackathons, because we are one of the few that actually only takes people that we accept through this application. We still try to be open to newer people. So for us, we are trying to open it up to Penn students who have never built apps before but can code. So we still have an element of mentoring and trying to teach new people, but we really focus more on teaching people who already know how to code, how to do something new.
Okay, so the question is, how do you decide how to split up your locations, and what are the pros and cons of splitting it or having it in a centralized place?
So I guess I'll start with this. Everybody's probably heard of the MHAX Annex. Yeah. So basically, what happened was all the hackers were supposed to be in one building, and the fire code didn't work out like 7 days before the event, and we ended up having to split into two buildings. One of them, which was a little bit more raw than the other. But what the real problem wasn't necessarily the building. The real problem was we were not prepared to get resources to the building. It just like it created an entire new layer of logistics. Like there often wasn't enough volunteers there. There often wasn't enough food there. And over the first night, we really learned a lot and failed a lot with doing that. And hopefully, we picked it up for the second night for anybody who was part of the Annex team. But yeah, I would highly encourage, if you can, getting everybody together, or at least having a really, really good plan to make sure that the resources are split evenly.
So I think the answer that a lot of people will give you is to have it in one place, but I'll tell you a slight con of that, which is that the Wi-Fi is literally ridiculous if you want to get everyone into one building. Like we had hoped to get 1,300, 1,400 people out. We got like 1,100, and we had a ridiculous like Wi-Fi infrastructure, and it's still broke. We suspect that if we had hit our numbers, people wouldn't have had basically any Wi-Fi our entire event. And like that was like as legit as like Verizon could make the Wi-Fi. So there's some sketchy aspects to bring everyone into one venue that you should consider too.
And to add on top of that, not just like the actual splitting of people, but in terms of venue, I think it varies a lot in terms of cost. If you can get a venue that has like Wi-Fi already there, has power already there, you can benefit a lot from that versus us. We had basically an empty warehouse. So we had to spend, $26,000 on Wi-Fi, $40,000 on tables, chairs, lighting, audio, power. So, I mean, consider cost in terms of venue, and it can affect it a lot in the long run.
In terms of space, I agree that it's just not the same if everyone isn't in a central area. It kind of affects the energy, I feel, of the event. With regards to the Wi-Fi issue, HackMIT had some significant issues with Wi-Fi. Just like Hack Tech, you're gonna run into those problems. The solution is to hardwire, wire everyone that you can in, buy lots of Ethernet cable. Shout out to everyone who helped wire everyone in at HackMIT, because I know a lot of you guys are here and weren't associated with the team at all. And then with regards to food distribution, we found that the most effective way to distribute food was to have the main food area somewhat separate from the event. And I think one of the things that we did pretty well was to make the food process smooth. We had like multiple lines and people just kind of passed through, and it seemed to work out pretty well, but I don't think it would have worked out as well if we had done it at the side of our space.
So I think what the conclusion everybody's coming to is it's optimal to be in a big space if you can. It generally, it doesn't always work out that way. I know, like on our campus, we just don't have a space accessible like that, except the Palestra, and they kind of hate us and would never let us use it. But, strive towards the big space, work on the Wi-Fi issues, but it's also not the end of the world if you can't have everybody in the same space. We did split up PennApps last time and had one like central location and one like side location, which was about a block away. And that location was very nice and very beautiful, and people loved it there. And sometimes they complained a little about food coming a little late or not being close to the sponsors, but the weather also wasn't terrible, so nobody really minded going over there. But this time we really wanted to be in one space because it's winter and nobody wants to leave in the winter in Philadelphia. So consider all the factors you have and try to keep it to one space.
Hackathons have very limited resources, but they are a life-changing experience for a lot of beginners and newcomers. So how do you kind of promote new people coming to events and include them while kind of working with a very limited resource set?
All right, I guess I'll start. So this time around, we tried to do a lot more like busing than we did flights. It kind of made it a more like inclusive event than like a super prestigious one. we really just want it to be open for everyone and get as many people as there as possible. And at the same time, in the quality control issue, we did like kind of headhunt people, and we looked out for a lot of high school students who were thinking about coming to Michigan and trying to get them to visit Ann Arbor as well as go to the hackathon in Detroit, and make sure that they were having they would be the quality aspect. But yeah, it's kind of like an interesting dilemma that you have. Do you want like all people to be involved? Because I wasn't a good hacker until I went to my first hackathon. That's kind of like when I built my first app or whatever, and carried on. And if I wouldn't have been allowed to go to that hackathon, who knows where I'd be right now. So it's kind of like a philosophical thing. Like the PennApps approach is really awesome, but I think equally as awesome is just letting as many people as possible come.
I think differentiation might be good. Like if you want to make your hackathon like open to newer people, then maybe you should just make that your sole focus. You know, you can still have good hackers there, possibly as mentors, possibly as examples, whatever, but just differentiate and really make it your focus. And then once you decide that, I think we might be a little used to just like sending out emails and waves of emails and like quantity, like trumping, say, quality of outreach, just knowing that you'll get enough hackers if you just spread the word enough. But if you're really going for the newcomers, you have to really double down on like intense interactions, like maybe send a representative to a school, like talk about things in person, and really not just do things the usual way with outreach.
So there's actually going to be a talk about this from somebody who ran mentoring at PennApps last time. And essentially the reason why we've differentiated into becoming this like only accepting the best people is that we did very like ridiculous and awesome marketing for new Penn students to come and told them that we could teach them how to code in a weekend and it would be awesome. And then we just didn't do it. We didn't execute on it as well as we had wanted to. And we decided that it wasn't worth it to try and split all our resources and kind of have this messy structure when we can have one event really focused at, you know, getting the best hackers there and perhaps having other events later that are focused just on teaching new people on campus how to code and getting all of the best mentors and best resources allocated right towards that.
So it's pretty interesting. If you want to get a lot of minorities and female engineers out to your event, there are a ridiculous number of financial sources that will pretty much fund your entire hackathon. Like we have a woman who hopefully is going to fund a large portion of our next hackathon, and people haven't been reaching out to those sources. And so I encourage you very much to find a lot of people who are willing to do that because they exist.
You should get that in writing.
Yes, we will this time.
All right. Well, let's give everybody up here a big round of applause. You guys did a great job.